Hello again, Marvin Kilborn here, retired public school teacher. My last video was about my 2 years at Henderson High School, where I basically got screwed out of my job after a new athletic director, head football coach came in. The district ended up converting one of my position to a teaching/coaching position. So yeah, they told me it was in the best interest of the district to not invite me back the next year. And this video is going to be about my year in Arp High School. And once again, as I'll mention later, they also gave me the old, in the best interest of the district, we won't be inviting you back next year. Got to tell you, by this point in my career, I was getting pretty sick and tired of hearing that. The wording is what I have trouble with. You know, if you're going to tell somebody it's in the best interest of the district to get rid of them, that implies they're a detriment. And I've never been a detriment to any place I've ever worked at all, ever. Military, civilian, teaching, doesn't matter. But they need to come up with better language, because normally what they're doing is they get rid of probationary contract employees just so that the district can do what it wants to do. And as I've mentioned in other videos, you're on probation for 3 years as a teacher, so it makes it real easy to just get rid of you. But they do need to come up with better language. It's like, hey, you know what? We just want to make some changes in the district, and that means we got to let you go. I mean, that's really what's happening, usually. I mean, there are teachers that truly deserve to be let go, but you don't get rid of your best teachers. And in every single school I ever taught in, I would call myself one of the best teachers. I was certainly one of the most successful math teachers, and I was always the most successful math teacher in every school I taught at. It just doesn't make sense to get rid of that person. And I'll kind of come back to this later when I start talking about the teachers that taught the same subjects I did at ARP. Anyway, ARP, Texas, just a really unimpressive little podunk. It's about 10 miles east of Tyler. It was only a 10-minute drive from my house, so I mean, that was awesome. But it's also just a depressed little town. It's not rich. It's not really known for anything. There's no major industry there. Probably the main thing ARP's known for, and probably very few people even know it, unless you're just really, really into cars. But the world's largest Dodge Viper collection is at Arp, Texas. There's a couple there that they own about 80 Dodge Vipers. They've invested well over $7-8 million just buying them, not to mention the cost of upkeep, registration, storage. They have a whole bunch of huge storage facilities out there in Arp. Anyway, if you're into cars, that might be fun to check out. There's several videos about this couple and their car collection, their Viper collection on YouTube. But yeah, world's largest Dodge Viper collection. Boy, if that's not an example of American excess and greed, I don't know what is. $7-8 million on a car collection. Pretty sure that money could go to better use. But anyway, that's probably the main thing ARP's known for. Other than that, it's just not a very impressive town. They don't pay the teachers very much. Actually, if I remember, I only made $2,000 or $3,000 over the state minimum wage for teachers. So it wasn't much. I think I was paid $35,000, $36,000 maybe to teach at ARP that 1 year. Pretty disgusting. I mean, you know, you've got college-educated professional teachers working for not much. I mean, there's a heck of a lot of jobs out there where you can make $36,000 a year and don't even have to go to college for it. But anyway, because I remember going to my interview, and the principal's name was Randy Copeland. Now, Randy Copeland, several times, at least 3 times during the interview, he made sure to tell me, we don't pay anything here, but people love it here and people tend to stay here, which is true. And all the years that I was looking and applying for teaching positions, I don't remember ARP ever advertising any vacancies at all. So maybe, you know, there's a reason for that. But anyway, Randy, like about 3 times during the interview, just reminded me, we don't pay anything, we don't pay anything. We don't even pay our math teachers any stipends or bonuses, which was true. So yeah, doesn't pay much. Now, what Randy didn't probably understand about me, and maybe I'm a little weird, but the money wasn't the main aspect for me being a teacher. I'm a retired military veteran. My pension is really good. So I wasn't as dependent on how much I could make as a teacher because I had a nice, foundation to work from. Actually, it was funny, in ARP, they pay so little, my military pension alone is almost what I was making in ARP. So yeah, the money wasn't the huge thing. I was just looking for a good place to teach, a good place to stay, maybe work there for years and finally retire. So anyway, ARP did offer me the job. I gladly accepted it, started. Didn't take me long to realize that Randy Copeland has got to be one of the dumbest men I've ever met in my life. Not only the dumbest man I've ever met in my life, but definitely the dumbest high school principal I've ever met. This guy was just dumb. He's one of those guys, you know how some people you can look in their eyes, and it just doesn't look like there's much going on behind them. Randy was like that. He always just looked vapid and lost. So I'm teaching. I actually taught Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Nice things about ARP, only a 10-minute drive from my home, so saving a lot of money on gas and all that. Wear and tear on the cars, 10-minute drive, really nice. Closest school from my house I ever had while I was teaching. Small school, there was only, I think 200 or 300 kids in the high school, if that. My classes were small. Biggest class I had, if I remember, I think was about 15. Teachers will tell you that's awesome. Only 15 kids, that's great. And that was like my biggest class out of all of my classes. Again, I taught Algebra 1, Algebra 2. Kids were great. Kids were awesome there. I loved it. One of the neat things about ARP, it's a small little community. Parental involvement is great. You hardly ever had any kind of student discipline problems. The kids all got along real well. On that rare occasion when you did have a problem with the kid, all you had to do was call the parent. The parents were involved there, and they actually took action when they got a call from the school or from a teacher. And you basically didn't have any other problems out of that kid after that. So, and I only had a couple kids that gave me a little trouble during the beginning of the school year. I called their parents. Promise you, I never had another problem out of the kids. So it was neat. I will say, though, it's probably one of the most cliquish, hickish little schools I worked at. For the most part, most of the teachers were pretty cool. But there were some interesting characters there. There was one lady that taught math, and she also coached volleyball. I won't mention her name. But she was known for dipping Copenhagen or Skoal snuff in her classroom. She would actually walk the halls, and I saw her several times. Saw her walking the halls holding onto her spit cup. So that's just crazy. I never saw that before, and never saw that happen in any other school I taught in. But yeah, there was, but again, when you're paying so little, again, 36,000, you're probably not going to get the best quality of employee or best quality of teacher. But she was there for years. And anyway, I did enjoy it. It was fun. But again, it didn't take long to realize, probably not going to work out here. Big surprise. At the end of the first 6 weeks, actually at one point during the first 6 weeks, my department head, and we only had, I think, 4 or 5 math teachers. We all taught either 2 or 3 subjects. But the math department head came to me and talked to me once and noticed that I was given a lot of hundreds for grades on daily work, which I typically did. A lot of times on daily work, I would do the work with the students. And since we all did it together as a group, as a class, I tended to just give them hundreds. But then when it came to a test, well, you're on your own. Well, I'm going to actually grade your test. But she told me that you can't do that, which is a big no-no. Teachers have a certain level of autonomy. Teachers are allowed to teach the way they want to teach, and they're allowed to grade the way they want to grade. As a matter of fact, nobody can go in and change a teacher's grades. But they were trying to tell me that I needed to grade harder. But of course I didn't. I'm hard-headed. I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's all on the up and up. It's all legal. I never did anything wrong. But it's just I'm teaching the way I think it ought to be taught, and I'm grading the way I think it ought to be taught. I am the teacher of that classroom. So I didn't change that. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, Randy Copeland, this idiot, what a fool. Thing with Randy, he was another perfect example of why public education needs to be changed, especially in the area of public school administration. As I've said before, we make it way too easy for people to become school administrators. And Randy Copeland was a perfect example of this. All he was a PE teacher. That's his one and only teacher certification, PE. So he's basically a gym teacher, which is nothing. If you remember gym, it's run a couple laps, here's the balls, go play. I mean, PE teachers aren't teachers at all, not even close. So his certification was PE teacher, and then later he became a principal. And then, of course, now he's a principal of one of the lowest paying high schools districts in the state of Texas. So, yeah, it's not like they were going to get the best principal on the planet, but this guy was just spectacularly stupid. At the end of the first 6 weeks grading period, he came up to me. He goes, "Mr. Kilborn, I've noticed that there's more than a 10-point difference between your 6 weeks exam grade and the grades the students got in your class." Honestly, I had no idea where the heck the guy was even coming from. I've never heard anything so stupid in my life. So I asked, got to thinking, he goes, "No, there can't be more than a 10-point difference between their 6 weeks test grade and their final grade in your class for that 6 weeks." And I'm just thinking, this place is stupid. I mean, for one, you're not paying anything, which is true. They weren't paying much at all. You don't even give your math and science teachers a stipend, which most districts do. And now you're trying to dictate to me how I'm going to grade? Unbelievable. So I asked to have a meeting with him, and I went to his office, and he just said, "In my experience, I've never seen more than a 10-point difference between the final 6 weeks test grade and the final grade." And I'm just like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. So anyway, what I did from that point on, just to try to keep the peace, was at the end of the grading period, before I would submit my grades, I would go ahead and change the grades if I needed to, manipulate them, which was kind of crappy, but I would just change it to make sure that no kid had more than a 10-point difference between their test grade and their 6 weeks grade. And that made him happy. And he never even questioned how I did that. I mean, he was happy. He was so stupid. He was happy that when he looked at all the grades, there wasn't more than a 10-point difference. It was weird. One quick story, and I've got several, basically just kind of some stories here on this video. My wife and I have 4 vehicles, probably at least 2 more than we need, but whatever. My daily driver back then, and still is a Dodge Challenger, and I would drive the Challenger to work every day. But we also have a 2001 Jaguar XK8 convertible that we got a really, really good deal on. We didn't hardly pay much for it, but it's a beautiful car. If you know much about Jaguars, it's a beautiful ride. And what I would do is I would drive that Jaguar to work every Friday. Just get it out of the garage, get some miles on it, keep the battery charged up. And on Fridays, I would drive that car to work. Well, at some point during the football season, high schools have what's called a homecoming game. And then they have homecoming queen and homecoming duchesses, and some schools even have homecoming kings and dukes, I guess. But Arp had a homecoming queen and her little court of duchesses. And the homecoming committee, or some lady that ran that, came and asked, goes, "Mr. Kilborn, at the homecoming game, we have a little parade where the homecoming queen and her court, they sit in cars. And we've noticed you have a Jaguar. Would you mind driving the homecoming queen in your Jaguar?" Since it was a convertible, put the top down, she could sit up there on the back seat, and they basically parade around the track that's around the football field. And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem doing that." So, and what's really cool is I had mentioned about the Dodge Vipers. Well, one of the things that the people that own the Vipers would do is they would donate 1 or 2 of their Vipers to participate in this little homecoming parade. So I don't know, that was kind of cool. The homecoming queen didn't want to ride in a Viper. She wanted to ride in my wife and my Jaguar. So that was neat. So anyway, we're staging at right outside the stadium, going to drive down into the football stadium and then stage to get up to the track. And then we go to like center stands, and that's where the homecoming queen and her little court would each load into vehicles, and we drive around the track. Well, as my wife and I took Marilyn, I took my wife with me, and we sat in the front, and we're sitting there staging, and Randy Copeland, this idiot, as we stage up, I guess to this point, I guess he didn't realize that we had a Jaguar, and he sure as heck didn't know how little we paid for it. But we drive up, and he's looking and said, "Mr. Kilborn," he said, "looks like I'm paying you too much." Well, I just kind of laughed because I don't know, it was just stupid for him to say that. But my wife was really pissed, and she was right, because he was dumb. For one, Arp pays nothing. Arp doesn't pay its teachers very well, and Randy Copeland ain't paying anybody shit. The tax-paying citizens of the country, and specifically Arp, Texas, is who's paying teachers. I guess you could go as far as saying the school district itself is paying the teachers. But the principal, he's just another district employee. He's not paying anybody anything. And in Arp, since they're not paying anything, yeah, I guess it was basically kind of insulting, just a stupid thing for him to say. But again, he was, like I said earlier, he's probably one of the stupidest men I've ever met. Probably the only one that would rival him was an old master sergeant I worked for in the Air Force. He was pretty dumb. But Randy Copeland, just an idiot. Anyway, that's the story about the homecoming. We went up, and the little girls loaded into the cars. We drove around, let them out, and my wife and I went home. We might have stayed for the game. I don't remember. Not important. So anyway, later on during the year, Randy Copeland, no, here's what came first. Later on in the year, I was sitting in the teacher lunchroom, which was a mistake. Really shouldn't hang out in the teacher workroom or the teacher lunchroom. If you want to become a teacher, it's just kind of a good bit of advice. If you're smart, you'll just stay in your room as much as possible, because public education employs the biggest backstabbers and petty little whiners that you're ever going to find. But I'm sitting in the lunchroom, and this lady, she was the home economics teacher. She came in, and she had known that I had worked in Henderson. She didn't think that I didn't live in Henderson, but she knew that I had taught in Henderson. So she walked in and said, "Hey, Mr. Kilborn, did you hear that Dickie Meeks retired?" And there was a big write-up about him in the Henderson newspaper. And Dickie Meeks was the football coach, athletic director in Henderson, who had left, which allowed the district to then turn around and hire this guy named Rick Castle, which ultimately led to me losing my position. So in a sense, Dickie Meeks kind of helped me lose my job. And all Dickie Meeks did, he was the athletic director, and he wanted to leave Henderson to go to a place called Pittsburgh, Texas, to finish out his last year or two of being a football coach, because he wanted to retire up in Pittsburgh, Texas. So his desire, what he wanted to do, screwed me out of probably the best job I ever had in teaching. So yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of the whole athletic aspect or coaching aspect of public education. It was bad enough that I became a math teacher because I couldn't find a social studies teaching job, and I couldn't find a social studies teaching job mainly because I'm not a coach. And then lo and behold, this athletics component of public education also screwed me out of at least one, maybe more math jobs. So yeah, not a huge fan of how public education is set up. But anyway, she came in and said, "Did you hear Dickie Meeks retired?" And I said, and she goes, "Oh no, I'm sorry, you don't live in Henderson." I said, "No, and I wouldn't care anyway." And my comment was, I don't understand how these damn football coaches are deified so. I mean, you got a guy spends 20, 30 years in public education coaching football, and he might get lucky enough to win the state championship one time, or win one of the many state championships Texas has. And then he's deified, held up as like some kind of demigod. A huge article written up about him in the paper, and he might even have a parade if the town's small enough. But you get a teacher could invest their entire life into teaching, and they get nothing. I mean, nothing. No goodbye kiss, no card, no party, no nothing. and the fact that coaches kind of screwed me out of some teaching positions. Yeah, now I have to be careful. I have nothing against coaches in general or in person. Personally, I don't have anything against coaches. These are just men and women who need to make a living, and that's one of the things you can do is be a coach. But as I set out in another video on how to improve public education, let them coach. Don't make them be teachers, or don't even let them be teachers. And certainly, I mean, academics should come first. I think anybody should agree on that. Academics and education should come first and have precedence over athletics. So what I said was, I don't understand why football coaches are deified. So these coaches are basically just teaching children how to play games, but they're held up as something super, super special. Well, the lady who taught math and also did Skoll or Copenhagen or whatever in her classroom, she was sitting at the table, and she was a volleyball coach. So she took offense. She ran to the principal and the idiot Randy Copeland and said, Mr. Kilborn's bad-mouthing coaches, and which isn't exactly what I was trying to do. It may have come across that way. It's just not the way I meant it. I truly meant it to be just, I don't understand why you're deifying football coaches and treating teachers like they're nothing. So anyway, a couple weeks later, Randy Copeland comes to my room and says, Mr. Kilborn, it's been brought to my attention that you've been going around bad-mouthing coaches. I said, no, sir, I'm not going around bad-mouthing coaches. I said, and I know what happened here. So I explained to him what had happened. And it was easy for me to do that because, no, I'm not going around bad-mouthing coaches. So it's not like I had to think about all these different days that I may have said something negative about coaches. No, I knew it was just that one single incident. I knew what happened. I didn't know who turned me in, but but that was it. And I'm like, you know what, between the grading thing and now he's thinking I've got something against coaches, and that's all he ever was a damn coach. Probably picked the wrong guy to piss off. And there was another thing that happened too. I used to play show episodes of the TV show Numbers, and I've mentioned that TV show in other videos. And Numbers was a wonderful criminal procedural type TV show, but it was about a math genius who helped the FBI solve crimes. And I just thought it'd be a neat thing to on occasion show an episode of this to my Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 students. And just either as a reward or just showing, hey, look, math is actually useful, and they do use it out there. And this is a great TV show, and it was just interesting. And Arp was so laid back, I didn't think I'd have any problem doing that. In Arp, teachers weren't even required to turn in lesson plans. It's the only school I ever worked at where you weren't even required or expected to let the administration know what you were teaching. No requirement at all, which is really great. It's kind of the way it should be. Anyway, somebody had mentioned to Copeland that I was showing videos on how to play poker. I don't know where that came from, but he came to me and asked, are you showing videos on how to play poker? And I'm like, no. And so what are you doing? So I explained to him that I was showing an episode of the TV show Numbers. I told him you're more than welcome to come in and watch. And he goes, no, I don't want to do that. He said, but I just want to make sure if you're going to do that, make sure you're able to defend and support what you're doing. So all right, no problem. Which I took that to mean it was okay for me to do it. If anybody challenged me on it, then I felt that I could, and it wouldn't be that big a deal. It's not like I was showing TV shows every single day. It was just on occasion. And actually, one of my other students told me that the typing teacher at the middle school showed that TV show for some reason. I don't know why a typing teacher would be showing episodes of Numbers, but apparently she did, and it's no big deal. Well, turns out later on, yeah, Copeland really thought that he had told me not to do it. So the next time I showed an episode of Numbers, Copeland comes to me and tells me, and actually he talked about it the same day he confronted me about me bad-mouthing coaches. He goes, I also have learned that you're still showing that TV show I told you not to show. No, sir, you told me I needed to be able to support and defend it. And of course he said, well, no, sir, I told you not to show it anymore, which is like, no, that's not what happened. But again, just proving what an idiot this fool was. So certainly by this point, I'm like, I'm probably going to be given the best interest of the district speech. So continue to do my job. I even went ahead and wrote my letter of resignation, because I know as soon as they give you that little, in the best interest of the district, we're not going to invite you back next year. Then what you do is you just go ahead and turn around and write a letter of resignation and give it to them. And that way, next time you're looking for a job, you don't have to tell anybody that you were basically told you were not going to be renewed or let go or whatever. So sure enough, right before spring break, Copeland comes in, tells me, Mr. Kilburn, in the best interest of the district. I started laughing, and he'll be laughing. What's so funny? That's why I knew this was going to happen. So I opened my drawer and I took my letter of resignation and said, here you go. Here's my letter of resignation. I'll finish out the year, and that's it. Well, shortly after that, and again, this was right before spring break, and he may have even said this before spring break, but at some point we were having a faculty meeting, and Copeland, he got up and told everybody, look, there's a rumor going around that I'm leaving. And I just want to tell you that's not true. I love Arp ISD. My special needs daughter is well taken care of in this district by the teachers. My daughter loves her teachers. I love it here. I love being the principal here. I'm not going anywhere, so we need to get rid of this rumor. I'm staying in art for the rest of my career. That's what he told us behind his vapid, blank-looking eyes. Well, not long after that, and not long after he gave me the best interest of the district speech, turns out, sure enough, he's leaving. He decided to he applied for and somehow got accepted to be the athletic director in White House ISD, just down the road from Tyler, and not too far from Arp either. So, well, by this point, I'm pretty pissed. I'm like, this son of a bitch. He put me out of a job, and then he lied to every single one of us, telling us he's not going anywhere, and now he is going somewhere. So he puts me out of a job, and then he himself leaves. So I was in the workroom once talking to another teacher, and I probably shouldn't have said this, but hey, at this point, I'm not coming back anyway. I told this teacher friend of mine, I said, hey, you see what Copeland did? He lied to us that he wasn't going anywhere. He gives me the best interest of the district speech. I'm not coming back. Lies to us that he's not going anywhere. Now he is leaving. I said, what an asshole. Puts me out of a job, and now he's not even staying. Well, somebody overheard me. Actually, it was the lady that works in the office was right there. And I knew she was there. So here's another case of me not being smart enough to keep my mouth shut. I didn't care. And that's usually how I am. I really don't care. I'm gonna speak my mind. I'm gonna tell you what I think and how I feel. If it gets me in trouble, so be it. So anyway, I said that. The lady runs out of the room, and she runs and tells the assistant principal, Mr. Kilburn called Mr. Copeland an asshole. So Arrington comes to get me. He takes me to his office. Says, hey, Mr. Kilburn. Is it true that you referred to Mr. Copeland as being an asshole? And I said, I was a little chagrined. Shame on me. I shouldn't have probably done it. But anyway, I said, yeah, I did. And he goes, you know what, Mr. Kilburn? He said, I would expect better out of a military veteran. And I told him, I said, well, Shannon, for one, you ain't got no business expecting anything out of any military veteran. You never served. So don't even go down that road with me. But yeah, I probably shouldn't have said it, but I did say it. I referred to him as an asshole. And I said, as far as I'm concerned, he is. He put me out of a job and then lied to us. Now he's leaving. So yeah, the whole thing sucked. Anyway, right after that, Arrington, Shannon, he brings me a letter placing me on administrative leave with pay to finish out the school year. So once again, I'm on this road, getting let go and being placed on administrative leave with pay. Well, that's fine. That's cool. I would have really enjoyed staying there the rest of the year and teaching my students, but so be it. When it came to the test, again, Algebra 1 is a tested subject. I did manage to stay there long enough to give the students the Algebra 1 STAR test. Another lady also taught Algebra 1, so it was me and her that taught Algebra 1. It was really weird. This other lady, she used to send her Algebra 2 students to me to get help on doing their Algebra 2, because even though she taught Algebra 2, she didn't really know how to do it. So here she is being paid to do a job she doesn't really know how to do. Students would come to me to ask me, and it would say, hey, Miss McGee doesn't know how to do this problem, so can you explain it to me? Oh my God. So yeah, and of course I had no problem doing that. Well, I did learn too that, and I knew that McGee had not even finished teaching all of the Algebra 1 skills before the algebra test. There was still stuff she had not taught. So all of our students take the Algebra 1 STAR test, and they put me on administrative leave before we got the results back. But I was lucky enough, the school counselor made sure to send the results to me at home since I was on administrative leave. And turns out that year, 95% of my students had passed the Algebra 1 STAR test, 95%. I should have had my head shaved that year, but again, I wasn't there. And then Ms. McGee, she only had like 70% of her students pass the thing, which makes sense. She hadn't even finished teaching them everything they needed to know for the test, so she didn't have very good results. And of course, that just kind of brings me back to the whole in the best interest of the district thing. Basically, the idiot Copeland let me go because he didn't appreciate something I had said about football coaches. So he didn't like it, so he got rid of me. But I'm like the best math teacher you have. So is it really in the best interest of a school district to get rid of their best people, their best teachers? Hey, you don't have to like me. That's always been my attitude. You don't have to like me. We don't live together. We just work together. If an employee is doing a top-notch job, you don't have to like them. Just accept that they do great work and carry on. But anyway, that's just not the way it happens, at least not in public education. If you're not liked, you're not going to be there long. All right, that's all I can think of to say about ARP. Video went longer than I thought it would, really. My next couple videos, 2 or 3, I'm going to talk about Tatum. That's my final district. I'll do one video on why I retired, what ultimately led to me retiring when I did. And after that, my story is complete. Probably going to continue doing some kind of videos on something, maybe reaction videos. There's always some crazy nonsense going on in the world of public education that I've got an opinion about. So that's probably what I'll do. Until then, thank you so much for watching my videos. Thanks for hanging in there. Until next time, bye-bye.